New patch means a new meta, so let's just get into how to play this. There are a ton of changes so far, and like you guys already know, I talked about Morgana yesterday in one of my composition guides, and Morgana's pretty much taken over the meta. She's played in almost every composition. She's kind of just splashed in as an extra unit, and kind of like you could do like Morgana Ezreal as like your 2 random units just to get like Dazzler in if you really want it. I've been seeing like Ashe Morgana comps. I've been seeing like random legendaries plus Morgana comps. Like pretty much everything is working right now. But Enlightened's still the strongest comp. So Enlightened I'd say is S+ tier. Ashe with like Hunters, Brawlers, Elderwood, same with Dusk, same with Ahri. Ahri might be like the lowest of the S tiers right now. Sharpshooters are still really good, but they get countered by Talon. Duelist, super good if you get the right start for it. Cultist, I think this is a sleeper OP this patch, and like I'll get into why later. All the ninja comps got nerfed, and we have Moonlight Diana, which is really, really good still if you hit it. Warlords still decent, and I've even seen Moonlight Lissandra like a tiny bit. It's still playable, but like for the Moonlight comps, you need to get the right starts for them, of course. So let's get into like the actual composition. So S tiers, we have Enlightened. This is the comp right here. It's like a basic comp of it. You could go for any chosen, which is really great for them as I go into in my guide, but I'll let you guys, like, if you guys really want to learn how to play this, you could go to my website, BunnyMuffins.lol, click this full guide here, or I think the guide's actually still on the homepage, or you can like check out my other YouTube video if you prefer video format. So I'm not going to go into detail for Enlightened because I made a guide for it. And then like next up we have Ashe plus anything. Like I've seen 5 Hunters, I've seen 6 Elderwood, I've seen like 4 to 6 Brawler. It all works. Hunters is probably like the newest edition because no one really played that before. People normally just played like 2 or 3 Hunters, but now people are playing like 4 or 5 with like a chosen Hunter. They're all really good. It just depends on what you hit because we can't choose what chosen we get each game. 6 Dusk plus random units. Riven's still really good right now, so you just like throw a bunch of tank items on her, go for 6 Dusk, and she's gonna do really well regardless of what happens. Vanguard Mystic, obviously this composition got nerfed quite a bit, but it's still pretty good. Like Ahri still kills stuff with like Jeweled Gauntlet Infinity Edge or like Jeweled Gauntlet Hat or something like that, or double Jeweled Gauntlet. Any combination of those work. You can't like choose your items again. Guardian Angel is good, Spear of Shojin is good, Blue Buff is good for like the 3rd item, like the non-damage item. But just make sure you have like 3 items on her. After that, you want to itemize Sejuani as usual. And like you could go 4 Vanguard, 4 Mystic. You could add in like random units such as like Adepts with Shen as a Mystic, and then add in like Yone or Aurelia. Like it all works. You just need tanks plus Ahri. A tier Sharpshooter. Again, Sharpshooter is really strong, but because everyone's playing Talon, it's slightly weaker. I like to play for like a strong early game with Sharpshooters, and I do that by slamming all these like team-oriented items. There are obviously better items for Jinx if you want like to go pure damage, such as Jeweled Gauntlet or like Spear of Shojin, but both builds work. It just depends on what you're going for that game. If you want to like have a higher win rate, maybe go for the Jeweled Gauntlet. If you want to have like a higher top 4 rate, go for the Lockets. But really strong comp. Duelist, very interesting as well because you either get an insane Duelist game or you don't play them at all. So just make sure you're playing them at the right time or when you should be playing them. Next up, we have 6 or 9 Cultists. Again, I talked about this before. I think it's sleeper OP because of the changes they made to the Cultists, where the chosen Cultist gains additional buffs to Galio. So like go 6 or 9. 9's probably pretty cool, but like 6 is obviously going to be really strong in the mid game. And after that, you just splash in random units such as like Dusk. It's really good because a lot of the units overlap, so you could get a bunch of synergies that way. So that's what I prefer to do. But you could go like any random legendaries instead of the Dusk units if you're not finding them. Next up, we have the B tiers. Not going to spend too much time on it. These are comps where like they're not that great, but if you get like perfect starts for them, like go ahead and try them. So if you get an RFC Zed, maybe you could play either Zed carry with Ninja Shade or like the Shade Spirit Zed. Akali with Ninja and Assassins. Akali got a big nerf, so she's really not as strong anymore. She got like a 1/4 second mana lockup, so blue buff is not as effective on her anymore. Moonlight, Diana, and Assassins. This comp's, again, it's going to be really good if you hit everything perfectly. Like I've seen this win a lot of games. This might be one of the higher like top 4 rate compositions just because like the only people who play it only play it with like perfect starts. So you should do the same. Don't like force this build, only go for it if you get both good Diana items and a Moonlight chosen and a ton of Dianas and other Moonlights early. Warlords really good. You just play 3 to 6 or 9 Warlords and then just slowly transition out into other units. You have a lot of good item holders for random legendaries. If you go for like 9 Warlord at level 8, you could go ahead and play that and then slowly sell off Warlords one at a time for like 2-star legendaries. or just random complementary synergies. Next up, we have Moonlight Lissandra. So Lissandra, she's always going to be in a weird spot, but like you just put a bunch of mana and ability power items on her and she generally does decently well. Not as good as the other compositions in B tier, so she might be like between B and C tier. Like out of all these comps, I probably would play her the least. And don't play C tier unless you're playing purely for fun, but if you want to climb, stick to the S tiers, A tiers, and sometimes the B tiers. But if you want to like read about these and play it in your games, because like anything works at most ratings, right? You could go ahead and check these out and maybe try some of them as well. So now onto the items. So carousel priority, there's a bit of a debate about this. So like obviously everyone's going for Talon items. So sword's going to be the most important or most contested, but rod is really good if you're playing for flex starts because rod, it builds a lot of the strong early game items and it builds a lot of Morgana items. So if you're playing Morgana plus anything, rod's a really good item for that. Glove is always going to be one of the strongest items because it builds both offensive and defensive items. So you definitely want to try to get this as much as possible if you can't get the first two. After that, I think there's a big drop off, like tier and chain. They're not quite as strong as these top three in my opinion, but you could go for these afterwards. And then bow after that, it's really only good for like the RFC builds, and no one really builds that anymore because ninjas got nerfed. Wukong isn't really playable anymore, so like you don't really need as many bows as you needed before. Negatron and Belt, these two are generally like the worst items right now. They do build some really good items though, even though they're one of the worst. They build Chalice of Power and Sunfire Cape down here, which we'll get into shortly. But apart from that, they're not really that useful, so I try to stay away from these items if I can. So now onto the item quadrant. I did update this for the most recent patch, and I made a couple of changes. Obviously, Static Shib moves down a lot because it got nerfed. But if you guys are new, try to build the items on the top right. Maybe like slam some of these items early because they are both strong and versatile. So it'll save you a lot of health points in the early game. Try to avoid the items on the bottom left. These are generally like either situational and weak items. Bottom right, you could like play them in most compositions, but they're just not that strong right now. And then top left, it's situational but strong items. So like RFC, useless on 90% of the champions in the game, but super, super critical for like 10% of them. So just stuff to keep in mind. If you guys need like an item tier list, this is something to look out for. But yeah, that's pretty much it. You could find all this on my website at bunnymuffins.lol/meta, where I update this tier list every Friday. But yeah, just to sum up again, S tier or S plus, I'd say is Enlightened, and then the other S tiers are any Ashe, Comp, Dusk, Ahri. A tier, Sharpshooter, Duelist, Cultist, and then B tier, you have all the ninja comps, Moonlights, Warlords, and Moonlight Lissandra. So like again, like I think Cultist is going to be sleeper OP this patch. I think it's like a much stronger composition compared to how much it's being played right now. So something to try out if you guys are looking for like a new comp that's also pretty good. But yeah, that's it from me this week. If you guys are wondering, I am wearing like a kind of like an interesting sweatshirt right now, if you guys recognize that symbol. I am going to be doing like a merch store in a couple of days, so definitely look out for that if you guys are interested in any of that stuff. But yeah, I'll see you guys hopefully like sometime later this week, because I do plan on making a ton more videos 4 or 5 times a week instead of just 2 or 3. Hopefully I can stick with that. I hope you guys try to keep me honest with it as well. But yeah, if you guys are new, go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below. Notification bell, like button, all that stuff. I am going to be releasing like a how to get to diamond guide very shortly, so I'm in the middle of recording it right now, so hopefully this weekend we can pump that one out. But yeah, I'll see you guys at that video, I guess.